Welcome everyone. I'm Em. I'm one of the librarians here at Rockland Public Library, and we are so thrilled to be hosting tonight's program. I'm happy to just hop right into it and turn it right over to tonight's speaker. Meredith Hall's memoir, Without a Map, was instantly recognized as a classic of the genre and became a New York Times bestseller. It was named a Best Book of the Year by Kirkus and BookSense and was an Elle magazine Reader's Pick of the Year. Hall was a recipient of the 2004 Gift of Freedom Award from A Room of Her Own Foundation. Her work has appeared in 5 Points, the Gettysburg Review, the Kenyon Review, the Southern Review, the New York Times, and many other publications. Hall divides her time between Maine and California, and her novel Beneficence was selected as the Maine Humanities Council Read Maine Fiction Pick for 2022. And I am happy to turn it right over to Meredith. Go right ahead.
Great. Thank you, Em. I have a banner coming right across my screen. There we go. Okay. Hello, everybody. I don't know how many of you have read Beneficence. I hope a lot of you have. I hope if you haven't read it yet that you will come to this book after this conversation tonight. This is the paperback, Beneficence. And we will talk tonight. I'm going to read a little bit from it and take questions. If you have something you'd like to know about, I would love to have a conversation. This is, I'm sorry about our COVID times that we can't all sit together in the library. That would be my great, great desire right now. I wanted to say tonight, this book is about a loss, a significant loss in a family. It's, however, mostly about love and forgiveness. And it's about beneficence, this word that I chose for the title. It seems to me that with what's been going on in the last couple of weeks, we all are struggling toward a sense of finding and expressing love and forgiveness and beneficence. For me, beneficence is, it's part of us, this essential goodness, this grace that we carry. It's a desire, we have a desire for beneficence, and we have an innate ability to express beneficence. And with these terrible, terrible events lately, I think many of us are feeling extremely discouraged and worried. And so I think, although the context of this conversation tonight is a novel, it's a fiction, I think that maybe spending our evening focused on how love and forgiveness and beneficence rescue us. So I hope that we can carry that with us through the evening. Well, that's sort of the overall theme of a book. You know, of course, as I wrote Beneficence, I had no idea what it was going to be about. I didn't understand anything about it. And so that it became about a book about love and forgiveness and beneficence was a surprise to me. I made my way through it, and that's where it carried me. I had no idea that's what I was doing. And I wrote a memoir a number of years ago, Without a Map. And in the end, I can see now that Without a Map is also about love and forgiveness. So this seems to be the territory that I want to circle as a writer. I think that for many writers, making story is our way of understanding the world. And clearly it is the world of love and forgiveness and goodness, beneficence, that is the way I make story. It's what I circle. What the book is actually about, what the story is actually about, is about a dairy farm in Maine. And it is a farm that has been in Tup Senter's family for 5 generations. It has, in Tup's father's lifetime, become quite a derelict farm during the Depression. The farm really declined, and Tup's father felt that Tup would be spared the life of the farm by being educated. He actually chose, of his 5 children, he chose Tup to go out into the world and get an education. And then the father died, and Tup made the decision that he would return to the farm and run the farm as his father and his forebears had. And he and his new bride, Doris, come home to this farm that is quite decrepit, and they rebuild it and turn it into a very beautiful farm and a very, very successful and prosperous small dairy farm. There are 5 members of this family. Doris is the mother and the wife, Tup the father and husband, and 3 children. Sonny is the oldest, Dodie is in the middle, a girl, and Beston, a little boy. I've given 3 of these people voices in this book. Doris speaks. Dodie, I actually surprised myself by giving Dodie a voice. She spoke up and wanted to be heard. And Tup. And those 3 voices move through this book in a rhythm. We hear Dodie and then Doris and then Tup through this book. The story starts, it opens in the late-ish 1940s and runs through into the early to mid 1960s. So it covers a lot of time, both within this family and sort of culturally and historically. One of the things that I would like to say about this farm is that it's a place that is deeply loved by this family. They know work. They work hard on this farm. A farm of this size requires a tremendous commitment of love and work. And this family is willing to bring that work. It's a generous act. They bring that work to the farm, and in turn, the farm works very hard for them and is very generous. It provides very well for this family. The family, in fact, understands that it is housed on this very, very beautiful land, and that the land is so generous if they will give themselves to the labor of it. And the work binds them. They know that there are 2 things that bind them to each other. One is the great work of this farm, and the other is the great beauty of the farm. They know that they live in a place that has been of them, of this family, for so many generations, and husbanded well for most of that time, and they are very grateful for it. So those are the forces that bind this family. That binding is deeply challenged when the family, out of the blue, faces a tremendous trauma, a terrible loss. And the rest of the book looks at how they make their way through an almost insupportable grief. And there is no guarantee that they're going to make it through this. Their faith in each other, their faith in this farm and in beauty, their faith in God, what kind of God would do this to them, those are all deeply shaken. And we are allowed to watch this family struggle with deep feelings of guilt and failure and confusion and a real shattering of what they have relied on in their lives. And then it's called Beneficence. We watch these people make their way back out on the other side of this, but it takes a long time. The book is organized in 4 sections: before, during, after, and a last section called Here, when they really do find themselves back in the world that they have planned for and worked so hard for. So I thought I would open with a reading by Doris. She actually opens the book. She is the first speaker. This was not planned by me. When I started writing this novel, I thought that I was going to write a book with one narrator, Tup. I was interested in what Tup had to say. So when I sat down and actually started writing, like most writers, I do not work to any kind of plan or outline. I had no idea what was going to happen in this book. I did know that there was going to be a tragedy. I knew this family was going to lose somebody, but that's all I knew. And I thought Tup was going to tell us that story. So I sat down to write and opened my word processor and prepared my writing space and prepared my mind and my heart. And I was astonished that somebody named Doris showed up. I had never met her. I had never conceived of her. She simply grabbed the page, which was a pretty strange and wonderful experience. And this is where she started. It's 1947, Doris. Every morning early, when Tup and I get up to start our chores, the whole house still quiet and the children asleep, I turn and pull the bed together, tugging at the sheets to make them tight and smooth. They are warm with our heat. I slide my hand across the place my husband slept, drawing the blankets up and closing in the warmth, like a memory of us, until night comes when we will lie down together again. Our room has big windows on the back of the house, looking out on the near pasture and the creek running through it. It is very nice to stand first thing every morning, looking out over the land. The trees along the hayfields look like ghosts some summer mornings when the ground fog hugs the warm earth. Excuse me. And then the mist slowly drifts up and away, so that by the time I am doing breakfast dishes, the sun makes sharp shadows of the fence wire, like long neat stitches binding us to this place. Tup and I have enough sense to know that we are blessed people. You cannot know what will come. Once, when Sonny and Dodie were just toddlers, both of them locked themselves in the milk room by mistake. Tup was busy in the north pasture. I could hear the tractor in the distance working. That must have been the year he bought the new tractor, 1938. And I was the one who was supposed to keep an eye on the children. I always did. I learned as soon as Sonny was born that when you have a child, your own life diminishes into just about nothing, and willingly so. Growing up, you are so full of dreams of what your life will be and how you will use all those years that sit like a promise. And always it is you at the center. And then you get married and those dreams change, but still you have big ideas about it all. Maybe the farm will extend, or you will have enough money to take the train to Sarasota one winter, or you will be paid by folks to cut and sew dresses and skirts you've learned how to copy from the magazines. We can't ever know what will come. You meet a man and marry him and find out whether you made a good choice or not. If you did, you love each other and work hard. And then you have your first baby, and whatever it was you ever dreamed about changes the first time you hold him and feed him and watch him study your face. Sonny came when I was 19 years old, and I forgot forever any of those things I had ever thought I wanted. I felt as if I were God, making such a good world for our children. When Sonny came, and then Dodie, and later Beston, I was willing to leave the life Tup and I had and let the children take that place. I am more than willing. So that morning, the children were out back with me while I hung out the clothes. This was before Beston was born, and about the last year before we got the washer. I heated water on the wood stove in the kitchen and lugged it out to the back dooryard and did the washing on the pump platform. The kids liked laundry day. It was all play for them, dipping little cups into the water and pouring it out on the dry gravel. On a warm morning, you could watch the water disappear like a stain from cloth. I pumped cold water for rinsing and poured it into the tub, and Sonny and Dodie would beg me to dump some of it over their heads, and with them shrieking and running away. It was a game we played every laundry day, all summer. The kids would get soaked and muddy, so it was all a good morning for them. Well, that day they got bored, I guess, and wandered off without my realizing. I never even noticed they were gone. I had carried the basket of wrung clothes over to the lines and was pinning them up when I suddenly heard nothing but the breeze rustling the wet cloth and the soft sound of the distant tractor. Like a terrible dream, your worst dream, that moment of inattention when you had forgotten for 1 minute that you were the mother, the one whose single purpose it was to keep your children safe, and that awful silence that jolted you back. I remember feeling so helpless, as if I couldn't fix this no matter what I might do, I ran to the kitchen door and then back to the pump and then turned toward the noise of the tractor so far off in the field, as if Tup could pluck my children out of the air. I needed Tup to give me a shake and tell me to think. And then I was back inside myself again, and I could say, they can't have gotten to the creek yet, so wherever they are all right. After that, it was just a story like all mothers have, that cold fear when your child takes off from your sight for just long enough to scare you into thinking you have lost him forever. And you know you are a terrible mother who cannot keep your children safe. I called and called, Sonny, Dodie, turning slowly in place so my voice would carry across the whole yard. And then I heard Sonny's little yell from the milk room, Mama, Mama. As scared as I was, I heard the panic children feel when they have moved beyond the reach of their mother's protection. I'm coming, I called, running to the barn. You silly ducks, where are you? I called in a false and cheerful voice to reassure them and to dispel the terror that had caught me, to assert that this was just an accident, an incident, a small event Tup and I would laugh over with relief when we shared supper. I could hear the door to the milk room rattle, and when I lifted the latch and pushed the door open, my children pressed their tearful faces into my apron, their arms clasped around my legs, the sweet animal smell of fresh milk tumbling out the door around us. My silly ducks, I said, stroking their tight little shoulders and hair wet from our laundry day game. It's all right. But I still remember the sound of my cries out into that sudden silence and of Tup's tractor off in the north pasture, so far away. I might note here, again, I see with this book written and published, I see things that I didn't see as I wrote the book. I didn't know at all. Clearly now for me, if you have read the book, this book is a precursor to a very terrible event that happens farther along in the book. There is Tup on his tractor far away, and Doris calling to him, and he can't hear her, and her distress, her helplessness as she tries to get Tup to come and help her. I didn't plan this. I had no idea that I wrote a suggestion of the larger scene in that opening scene. I didn't know I had done that. So there it is, a writer finding her own writing on the page as if she had not done it herself. There's one more thing I might say, and then I'm going to see if there are any questions that you would like to ask at this point. I'd love to have a little conversation, so I'm not the one talking at the camera. I wanted to talk a little bit about the source of this story. After I wrote my memoir, I was traveling. I traveled in the world for a couple of years with it. It was a very intimate memoir, a very intimate telling, my first book. And I was shocked at its success and what that meant. It meant that I was out talking to people for a couple of years across the country, not so much about the writing, which was a great disappointment to me, but about my life. And so I felt very exposed. I decided to move to fiction. And when I made that move, the only thing I knew as I started to thinking about it was that there was going to be a tragedy in a family. And I wanted to watch this particular man, the father and husband. He caught my attention because I thought that he was going to misbehave badly. I thought that he was going to be a character who could not love his family well and could not face down this terrible event that comes to them, this terrible loss, that he would be inadequate in his capacity for love. So I had these certain ideas about Tup Senter, and modeled, I know now, I realized later, modeled on my own father, who was a man who created great harm in his family. I always wondered, what did he think? I was estranged from him my entire adult life, and he certainly held my attention what did he think when he would lie awake at night in his bed, thinking about his actions, his decisions. And that's who I thought Tup Senter was going to be. It turns out that that's not at all who Tup Senter is. He certainly, like Doris, makes terrible mistakes, grabs for things desperately. But I came to love Tup. I love him. And he is not the character that I thought he was going to be. So the entire book changed. And it was Doris introducing us to Tup in that very first section. We moved from her losing her children in the milk room to she talks about the farm with so much love, and she talks about her husband and the father of these children with nothing but love and in-loveness, respect, tenderness, closeness, a very, very deep and private, very intimate closeness with him. And she was the one who introduced me to Tup. I understood as soon as she spoke. She claimed that first space in the book and started talking, and I understood that she was introducing me to a far more complex and far more interesting man than I thought I was going to write. So I will read a section by Tup, and you can hear his voice. But I wondered right now, if any stories have come, any questions have come in, or any of you people who are there would like to click into your video and raise a hand and say you have a question. Is there anything anybody would like to join in with at this point? I see that quiet, shy silence. Okay, I will keep going with this then. If there is a time, as I move through these comments, if there's a time that you would like to ask a question or make a comment, just click in and let me know that. I would really love that conversation more than my making these comments to this camera. So please do that. Okay, this is Tup in his first section. Doris has opened the book. This is all in the before section. Doris has opened the book, and then Dodie has her say. She's 10 years old, and she has a lot to say. She's a child. I truly fell in love with Dodie. I thought she would be a secondary character. I imagined that Dodie would be a truth teller. She would be the child between the mother and the father, and she would be the one who kind of mediated their stories. And she does that. She is a truth teller, but she also is an enormous person. She is a very, very large character, and she holds her place in this book. By the time the book closes, she's married and has a child, and still on the farm. And we, I think, watch her grow into quite a remarkable young woman. She is a remarkable girl when we start. So she speaks, Dodie speaks, and then Doris speaks, and then Dodie, and now Tup. And this is in Tup's section. Last winter, on a cold, clear, early January day, Doris and I organized our chores so we could take the afternoon skating with the children on Johns River in South Brookfield. The ice was thick, and we had had no snow since the cold weather really set in, so the ice was smooth and open. I truly loved to skate, and the day felt as exciting to me as to my children. This was the place my father brought his own children when the drudgery of his work life overwhelmed him in the dark early days of winter. That's not what drove me there, not too much work or the wrong work, but everyone needs a sense of cutting free once in a while, and Doris was quick to say yes. She and Dodie put together thermoses of hot chocolate, and Beston and Sonny brought the sled from the shed. They waxed the steel runners with a candle stub. Let me find my place. They waxed the steel runners with a candle stub and tied a new length of rope to the steering bar. All our outer clothes went behind the truck seat. Dodie got the place beside me and my hand, and the truck filled with happy nonsense and chatter. John's River is really just a wide, slow creek with overhanging trees and brush protecting muskrat and beaver bank dens. I've always thought it was a very good place, especially for children, because it spools out forward, not like a pond or lake surrounding you, but a river of ice inviting you away. I love that illusion, that sense of the possibility of going on and away, turning your back and giving yourself over to what you can't see ahead. The muddy landing was frozen, and someone, probably a trapper, had laid a good log down for sitting and a stone break for a small fire. Doris and I helped tighten the laces on the children's skates, Sonny always in new ones, and Dodie and Beston in his hand-me-downs. Dodie complained at the start of each winter about wanting figure skates like her mother's, but she had mastered hockey skates and seemed content once she got on the ice the first time every year. I seldom see Doris in slacks, but I complimented her, saying, "Well, Mr. Senter, you are looking very handsome today." I could count on her to laugh, and the children too. "Oh, but I change into a beautiful princess at midnight," she said with her open smile, "if a handsome prince decides to kiss me. My wife is a flirt, which no man ever complains about." Off we went, the sun glinting from the ice and the bare trees and the blue sky itself. I was happy the minute my skates hit the ice. This is something we never forget, the feeling of ice carved by our skates with a rasping swoosh. It is a certain kind of freedom to not make steps, but instead to slide a leg forward, the other leg, the first again, and find yourself suddenly almost lost, almost free of the world, skimming smoothly and effortlessly into the light. I felt a kind of euphoria, a real elation, and wondered for a minute if my children knew this kind of freedom yet. We circled each other, Beston reaching sometimes for Doris's hand or mine. Sonny and Dodie breaking away and swooping along, their arms outstretched, their faces receiving the clean winter light. No one spoke or called out, our skate, our skate blades scraping loudly. The children dragged the sled down onto the ice and took turns, two of them stepping into the loop of rope like a harness and pulling the third fast along the river in wide sweeping arcs. And now they shrieked and laughed and taunted one another. I watched Doris pull out of their way and start her silent remembering of a girl's ballet on ice, the twirls and little leaps and hips swishing side to side to go backward. She smiled, embarrassed to be watched, but she didn't stop, which pleased me. And I turned away and did my own remembering, the boy hard at hockey roaring low across the ice, feet pointing out to catch the ice and drive the body forward, faster and faster. And when I gained a curve in the river, suddenly the sounds behind me became muffled, and I slowly straightened and focused on the simple, smooth glide of skates on good ice, the memory so strong I had nothing to say about it. And I lifted my face to the sun, and swoosh, 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 swoosh in rhythm, I followed the shining ice. The noise and shouts fell behind me. "Daddy, Daddy, where are you going?" Dodie called, and the memory of skating and this moment of skating became the same act, and I was gone. I let myself be gone, Dodie's call left behind. I went forward and I was alone. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The sun was ahead of me. Nothing was behind me. There were no needs and no expectations and nothing waiting for me. The river curved right and left and further right. A ribbon laid here for me alone. A crow called from the top of a towering old stave oak, and the sun shone purple against him. I did not rush, taking the river as mine, the silence as mine, the emancipating light as mine, my legs strong and the cold air now stinging my lungs, all mine with nothing secluding me or hindering me or binding me. And so I did not stop. John's River winds smaller and smaller, and finally I knew that I had come a very long way from my responsibilities, and I felt a pang of worry that grew as I turned and pushed my way back. Now it felt like hard work, and the worry grew to a guilt that was crushing and that I resented and resisted. The light had changed, a warning. And so I found my family seated on the log, the day gone and cold, the hot drinks gone, the truck keys in my pocket. Doris said nothing, and I resented that too. The children told me that they were very frightened that I had gone through the ice, and I said sharply, I didn't go through the ice. I have more sense than that. We rode home in silence with no one's hand in mine. And although I knew that was a child's rebuke, I was not filled with sorrow about it as I might have been. Where had I gone, I wondered, that felt so distant from this family I love and so sovereign? We are always forgiven, and we made our way again and again to an afternoon of skating. But we never returned to John's River, as if keeping me from it would preserve us from some sort of sundering. So that's Tup, recognizing something in himself. This book opens with Doris and Tup telling us again and again that they are a family that is whole, a family that is deeply devoted, a family that is protected from the world. It's an isolated farm. They live quite a ways from town. A dirt road comes out past them to nothing. It ends in the hayfields of a neighbor's back fields, at the back of his farm. It goes nowhere. So they are at the end of this road. They are the only farm on this road. And they rely on that beautiful isolation. There's a creek that runs through the farm, through the pastures, and runs on to sea at the coast. It's called the Center Creek, and it maintains that name all the way out to the coast. So there are these bindings, the road and the creek, to a world outside, but they have very little to do with it. They are members of a church, as most farm families would have been in the 40s and 50s. They have faith in a God that protects them and holds them in love. But they really are an island. Doris feels that if she can keep her children within that island, on that island, she can keep them safe. And she senses that if any kind of danger is going to come, it's going to come from outside. Tup, on the other hand, worries. He senses that there's something about himself that might fail his children, bring harm in some way to his children. And he frets about this. He asks Doris about it. He tells us again and again in an earnest and almost pleading voice, I am a good man. He's beseeching us to understand that he is good, that his heart is good. He means nothing bad. He means only to love his family. And yet that island doesn't keep. Harm does come, and Tup does make mistakes. Doris herself is not able to protect anybody. She falls into a deep despair for a long time. So these people face their own weaknesses and failures in the ways that each of us do. They are human, I think. They are me. I know they are me. And other readers might find that they are in these people too. We are not perfect. And harm is made on top of the harm that was done by this terrible accident. These parents unwittingly bring further harm, and they struggle with that through their lives. I can talk a little bit about the move I made. As I made that move from memoir to fiction, I decided that I needed to be far less exposed than I was in that memoir. Traveling out in the world with that book, talking about my life, was quite challenging. And I decided to write fiction. I thought it wouldn't be very hard. How hard can it be? You know, I'm a great reader. I taught narrative writing and fiction and nonfiction for many years, I thought that I was ready to do this. And it was an enormous shift for me to move to fiction. I made that shift, and I think now I might not ever return to memoir. I love the ability to tell stories. I discovered that I am a storyteller through and through. You know, my parents were both single children, only children. They had neither of them had any siblings. And I think maybe that's why I didn't grow up with stories. I never heard any stories. I don't know any stories about my family, not my parents, not my grandparents, not my great-grandparents. I know nothing. And I think maybe that turned me into a writer and a storyteller. These characters become great storytellers. They always take us back to memory. Over and over and over, they tell us stories of things that happened in the past. The book is written present tense, but each character tells us once this happened, and off they go into an episodic story. But one of the things that has interested me most about this process as I wrote this fiction is that I oddly feel far more exposed personally in this novel than I ever did in my memoir. And I'm not exactly sure why. I think maybe it's this. In the memoir, I agreed to tell certain stories, and they are deeply intimate stories. And I agreed to that. I chose to do that. This novel is about people I don't know. I don't know any characters like this. I didn't take people from real life. I didn't take events from real life. I didn't know any of this. This is completely made up in my imagination, and I revel in it. I love the ability to make story out of nothing. So I went through it feeling pretty safe. And it was only as I came out of it at the end that I suddenly realized that I was feeling profoundly exposed. And I think it's two things. I think one of them is that, excuse me, how I see the world is on the page. How I see people is on the page. How I see any kind of faith in any kind of God or spirit, any kind of spiritual world, it's on the page. My fears, my joys are really on the page in this book. And I suddenly realized that I felt as if I had sort of unzipped myself and opened myself and said, okay, reader, come on inside, this is me. So that has been quite shocking to me. I am much more known in this book in ways than I was even in my very intimate memoir. The other thing too is that I only understood after I wrote this book that the deep emotional investment for me in the events surrounding this child's death really actually were my own story, that I didn't know it until it was done. But I lost a child in a very different way, to adoption, when I was 16 years old. And that the memoir circles those events and the loss of my family during that time. And I realized only at the end, only afterward, that I was writing a kind of sorrow that I know. It's certainly a different sorrow. Adoption, loss to adoption is not loss to death. But it's a sorrow that I knew. And surprise, surprise, I found my way to a story absolutely unknowingly, unwittingly, that is in many ways my own story. So no wonder I feel exposed. I see that now. I'm watching the time. I want to be certain that people have time to ask questions at the end. Em and I are inviting questions, a question and answer time at the end. I really hope that you will all raise your hand and speak up and ask questions. That's the most fun part of this. I'm interested in those questions, and so are all the other people visiting here. So I spoke about, there's one other brief thing that I thought you might be interested in. Excuse me. Readers, when they have a chance to talk to me, often ask about my writing pattern, my writing habit. And I thought you might be interested in this. Many people are. I can see that my writing has a very clear rhythm. It's poets call it a rhythm of poetry. I can see that. I don't do it consciously, but I can see that it's there. And I'm thinking that maybe it comes from this. I developed a writing habit right from the beginning of writing my memoir many years ago of listening, excuse me, of writing while I listen to instrumental music. I often listen to Bach, a solo cello, solo violin, and somehow came across Gregorian chants, one Gregorian chant, and I loved it. And I realized that that was going to be very helpful to me. And I spoke to my wonderful son, Zachary, about it, and he offered me a tape. He gave me a tape of, I don't know, hours and hours of Gregorian chants. And I started listening to that CD when I was writing my memoir, and that established a pattern. I come into my writing room, I sit down, I always have a mug of herb tea. I turn on my computer and I turn on Gregorian chants. And I've done this for so long that it's quite literally a switch that goes on in my brain, and I disappear into a place that is so far away, I can't describe it to you. It's another universe. I am not here. I'm not thinking, I'm not planning, I'm not making decisions. I'm in another place. And it is the beauty and power, the mystery of those Gregorian chants. I have no idea what they're saying. I don't understand them. I don't understand the faith that they arise from. I don't share that faith in any way. But they are beautiful, and they speak of a deep inner life and a universe far beyond us. And they suit me very well. So I listen to Gregorian chants. Beneficence was written to Gregorian chants. An endless loop, I know it by heart. I think it's 6 or 7 hours long, and I know it by heart. I sit down and write for the day with this loop going. If I get up to make a new cup of tea, maybe to eat, I turn them off. I absolutely never listen to them if I'm not writing. They are kind of a sacred place for me to write. So I thought you might be interested in that. I'm going to close by reading Doris again near the very end of the book. This is a part of the book in which Doris and Tup have been able to find their way back to this broken love. Great harm has been done. This is a number of years later. It has taken them a long time to find their way back to their family. They come to that love with great gratitude. The farm has been maintained, it has been sustained, and it has sustained them. Their remaining children are still with them. There has been a marriage. Dodie has married Danielle, and they have a child, Thomas. So there's a grandchild now, a very little boy in the household, and he is part of this healing. But I'm reading from that healing place. And this is, excuse me, I think this is pollen tonight, I apologize. This is Doris speaking. Last night, when we rose from the table, Best said, "Let Thomas and me wash the dishes," which the boy does enthusiastically, and the rest of us stayed at the table while they washed and dried and put away the dishes Tup had eaten his own suppers on when he was just a boy. Then we moved to the porch for the evening and put the lamps on, and Tup read aloud to Thomas while we listened. Beston went into the front room and opened the window to the porch. He sat at the piano, quietly picking out a melody. The music was soft and slow, a song about a man wandering back roads alone as the sun goes down. The trees stood in line along the road, sentinels watching over me, he sang. I was glad that Beston feels some sort of protection. Thomas leaned against his grandfather, listening. Later, Beston came out to the porch and said quietly, "That old piano needs tuning, but it is still my favorite one to play." He sat on the glider with his father and his young nephew and folded his fine hands and listened while Grandy returned to Thomas's story. We climbed the stairs and put out the lights. Tup and I lay together in our dark bed, his hand in my hair, his breath on my shoulder. The spring night was cool and damp. Listen, Tup whispered, there is so much. Partridge drummed from the edge of the woods, and the spring peeper chorus rose from the pond and overflowing creek. We have lain together in this bed for most of 32 years, listening to spring rising on this land, my husband said quietly in the dark. The cows slept with their calves in the safety of the barn. The night offered all its promise. Tup and I moved to each other, our heat and our weight and our devotion. We slept without guard. There is never a going back. What we say and what we do stays always. The great price of love and attachment is loss with us every day. But here too, each day, are there great easings. And I thought I would add a paragraph that comes very shortly after that. When Dodie is speaking, this is her last section in the book. And she tells us, the story of what happened has calmed. It was a long time ago. A wild and powerful river swept us far from shore, and then the current stilled and allowed us to make our way home. Thomas reminds us, this little boy, Thomas, reminds us of this story again and again. And so it has become a story we finally are able to speak aloud and understand. This is what happened, we can say. Once, a long time ago, on a sleeting day here in this house, we can say. This is the shape of the journey we each have taken, we can say. Thomas recites this story, free of dread. We rebound in his light. This kind of happiness requires courage. It requires a willingness to love, a willingness to forgive, a willingness to believe in some sort of goodness. It requires that we each accept what has been lost and offer ourselves to what we have now. So I think the timing is just right. I do hope very much that you have some questions or comments that you would like to share with everybody.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Oops. I think I'm muted. There we go. Now I'm not muted. All right. Thanks so much, Meredith. That was excellent. I have a quick question to start us off. You have all these excellent narrators in the book. So my question is sort of about the end of your writing process. Do you find coming towards the end of it that there were any characters that you really missed writing for, that you missed spending time with, that were sort of your favorites?
Yes, this is a great question. There are, in fact. I had to make the decision. I mentioned that I was really a novice. This was my first novel, and I was a novice at writing a fictive book. And I decided on these three narrators, which is a really, really crazy thing to do for a first writer of a novel. It's a really challenging thing. And I also decided that it would take place over a long period of time and first person, returning again and again to the past in these stories. So I set myself up with a challenge. I decided that three narrators, I naively decided that three narrators was my limit because I thought that it would ask too much of the reader to go beyond those three. So it really was not a wise decision. I had no information. I had no earned wisdom about that, but I stayed at three. And Dodie kind of weaseled her way in there. I hadn't expected that. I thought the parents would speak. I didn't know Dodie would want to talk so much. But there are two characters that I would like to return to. One is Beston. I just spoke about Beston. He's very silent in this book. He's the youngest child. Dodie is really forced into parenting, mothering Beston for a lot of this book, a lot of this life story. And Beston, she translates Beston for us. She delivers Beston to us, but we very seldom hear from Beston. And he's a very gifted boy, a very silent boy, and he suffered a great deal in that silence after this event. So I would like to return to Beston and give him his voice. I seriously am considering a book that opens with Beston to see where that goes. And there's somebody else. Tup has this other family, Helen and a child named Grace. We leave Grace when she's a toddler. She's a very, very little girl. But Tup has had this secret life, and we leave this child really abandoned at the end in another town. She doesn't know anything about Tup's world, his family, this farm. And I feel that I would like to go back and give Grace a story. She deserves a story. That's a great question. So maybe 2 more books. I never thought I'd be a writer who would ever return and write a sequel, but maybe I will do that.
That would be excellent. Yeah. I see at least one question or comment in the chat. Amy says, I enjoyed having you read excerpts of your book. I read it 3 months ago at least. Had this evening occurred then, I'd have had many more questions. So she apologizes for not having any for you now.
Okay, great. I understand.
And Laura says, thanks for your talk about your writing process and the story. I have only read your memoir and thought it was very well written.
Great, thank you very much. So now please read Beneficence and see what that memoir is. You know, my work at UNH was to teach memoir. I identified as a teacher and as a teacher of memoir. So read Beneficence and see what you think now of my fiction writing.
Excellent. Hi, yeah, I wonder if she'll be able to hear you just from.
All right, I can give it to you.
Sound good?
Yes, I can hear.
I haven't read your book, and of course I was just intrigued when I came into the library today. So I wanted to hear what a writer talks about when they talk about their own process. So thank you very much. In the synopsis and bits that you have given me, your characters seem to be extremely earnest. I would like to know if, in fact, who was the one that might pull a silly little trick or have that sense of humor?
Can you say it again? Who was the one who what?
What of your characters would have the sense of humor or the silly little trick that someone might pull on a family?
Yes, that would have been Dodie.
It would have been. Okay.
It would have been Dodie. And also, you know, Tup loves fun. Tup is the one who constantly instigates trips to go smelting in the middle of the night with the children, and the skating and sledding. And he catches his children and his wife and says, let's go do something fun, to go down to the beach and watch the sun set on a winter night and have a picnic on the beach, on a winter beach. He loves that. And he's a tease. When they sit in the truck, whoever sits next to them, they're all, of course, in the front seat in these old trucks. There's no back seat. And whoever sits next to him gets his hand, and he's a tease. So Tup is full of fun, but Dodie brims over with joy. And the abrupt shift at just 10 years old to being a child contending with great sorrow is really remarkable. And in the end, she's able to retrieve. She is essentially a woman, a girl and a woman who lives in great joy, and she returns to that. Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Yeah. And you know, these characters are earnest because I'm earnest. Your characters carry essential traits, whether you like them to or not.
Sure.
All right. I see. Oops, go ahead.
Do you see another question there, Em?
Yes. Amy says in the chat, I will also say I read Beneficence first and then read Without a Map. I enjoyed both and felt some crossovers. And that book caused many questions and intrigue about your life. It's very interesting.
Yes, great.
And I do want to remind people that you're also welcome to unmute yourself and ask away directly if you'd like to as well.
Yes, great. Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, good. I was intrigued about what you said about your writing process and the music you listen to. I had a couple of sessions doing proprioceptive writing with a mentor, and the prompt for proprioceptive writing is always music by Bach. Apparently there's something in that,
Yes.
what is it, monotonal, that that triggers, that part of our brain that then just gets going, as you say, with Gregorian chant. You just
Yeah.
are immersed in that, and that is your writing. I've not read Beneficence yet, so it was sort of with mixed, not wanting to know because I know I will read it, but enjoying hearing you read. And what I read Without a Map and was just really struck by how you came through all that with grace. And the grace emerged from the page.
Thank you very much. I am grateful to you for observing that. That's very nice. Do you know, when I wrote this book, this novel, I called it the center place through the entire writing, from beginning to end. It was the center place. That's the family name. And in Maine, I am a Mainer. In Maine, we refer to farms by the family name, the center place. And my editor said, that's not going to work because people are going to hear that and not know whether it's CEN or SEN, and they're not going to know where to find this book. So it became oddly a marketing issue. How do we get this book into people's hands? And I was disappointed. I can't tell you the list of possible titles I generated, my editor generated, my agent got in on it, she generated a bunch. And I really had trouble moving away from the center place. It was just so straightforward. And finally, my wonderful, brilliant editor, Josh Bodwell at Godine Publishing, said, I think you should call it Beneficence. And I said, Beneficence? I'm not sure. It's hard to say, and I'm not sure I even know what it means. And he said, sit with it for a while. And I sat on it and sat on it. And finally I decided, it's a beautiful word. I understand that its root is goodness. It's a good word. And I got comfortable and I said, okay. And so Beneficence became its title. And then in the processing of the process of publishing, Josh was wonderful. I have to tell you that he didn't ask for a single edit in this book. What you see is what I wrote, which is very, very gratifying for a writer. I can't tell you how gratifying. And so I didn't work inside the book again once it was titled Beneficence until copy edits came through. And I needed to look at a number of copy edit issues, punctuation or repetitive words. And when I reread the entire book, start to end, first, I was shocked to come across the word beneficence in my text. I had used the word beneficence, and I was absolutely shocked by that. And I kept reading, and I came across the word beneficence again, and later on again. And finally, again, 4 times in this book, I used the word beneficence. And so for fun, I returned to my memoir written 10 years before, and guess what? I used the word beneficence in my memoir, and I didn't even know that it was a word in my vocabulary. So clearly this is a book about, clearly not just this book, I am writing about people who move within a kind of a desire for goodness and a capacity for goodness. Those are my stories. So, I thought you might enjoy that story.
Sure.
Hi, Meredith. I
Hi.
just want to say, I just thought Beneficence was so beautifully written. I've read it twice now, and I actually work for the Maine Humanities Council. So we're very excited that Beneficence is part of Read Me for this summer. So we have hundreds of copies of your book. And I had never heard the word and didn't know what it meant, but it's just the perfect title for your book.
Thank you. I've come to like it very much. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful to the Maine Humanities Council for choosing my book for the Read Me program. And also many years ago, I actually wrote my memoir with the support of Maine Humanities Council with an artist grant. And so
oh, wow.
Yes, I received the Maine, I don't remember what it was called, but it's a grant given by the Maine Humanities Council to writers and artists. And it supported me while I wrote my memoir. So
That's wonderful, wonderful to hear. I will take that back to the council.
we have a
with
long
me.
history. We have a long history. I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful, beautiful book for
Thank you.
sure.
Thank you very much. There's another hand up again here.
I just want to know, does that mean that Beneficence is available at our local libraries in multiple
It is
copies?
indeed. Yes, yes. We have,
Wonderful
I
to
think,
know.
2 or 3 copies that have been generously provided by the Humanities Council. And I don't know if they're like currently in the library at the moment, but we do have
Okay.
copies.
And have the discussions been scheduled yet?
I don't, have you scheduled yours in Rockland? Or
We
are
haven't
you?
yet. We haven't set up a
Okay.
discussion yet.
I know we're working on it, and I'll make a plug for, and maybe you were going to do this, Meredith, but tomorrow Meredith and the other author who was also chosen is going to be on Maine Calling, which is on
Oh.
Maine Public Radio. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And that's at 11 o'clock
11.
tomorrow morning?
11 o'clock.
Yes, it's
And
on
it-
my calendar. I'm gonna
It re-
tune in.
Mhm. It rebroadcasts at 7 o'clock at night, and that will be a different format. Phuc Tran is the nonfiction choice for Read Maine, Read Me, and Christina Baker Klein was the author who recommended Phuc's book and mine, and so she will be interviewing us tomorrow.
Oh,
But I think we have 60 libraries now across the state who have signed up to do a Read Me program this
Wonderful,
summer.
wonderful.
Yeah,
It's a really wonderful program.
Mm-hmm.
And gets books into libraries that might not ordinarily offer them. So, well, this has been a great honor to talk with all of you. I hope that if you had secret questions, I answered those questions. If you haven't read this book yet, I hope that this program, the Read Me program, and the availability through these libraries will encourage you to go to this book and read it. It's been an incredible honor to be chosen for this role in the state, and an honor to be with all of you tonight. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Meredith. This is a really fascinating presentation. And thanks so much for everyone else for joining. Have a good night,
I'll be
everyone.
listening tomorrow. Maybe I'll call in with a
Yes.
question then.
I hope you do that. I hope all of you will do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.